everybody, we are back here outside the San Diego Convention Center for our annual video all about the convention center. So this is a companion piece. We've already got two other videos that fit really well with this, one on outside the convention center area and then the other one about this exhibit hall specifically. But this time we're going to talk to you a little bit about like where to line up, some things about how the lotteries fit into everything, and just some general floor type, or I should say convention center type information. Now this time around, unlike past years, we actually had a convention here earlier in the year, DreamHacks. We were out here for DreamHacks San Diego, and we were able to shoot all over the convention center inside, so we made a point to specifically get video to integrate into this guide that helps you a little bit with things like the escalators and where to line up and behind Ballroom 20 and all of those things. So when you see some of that video being spliced in, that's where it comes from this time around. Now we're recording this a couple weeks out from the big convention center opening day there on preview night, so with that there's going to be a lot of information we just don't have in our hands here right now. So please follow along, obviously with Comic-Con International on their socials. The SDCC unofficial blog has tireless number of articles there that really get to the heart of everything about the convention, and then of course outside Comic-Con with all of the outside convention center stuff as well. So it is still strange days. We said that a year ago when we did this video, and it was strange for a different reason, coming back to the convention after the years closed with the pandemic. This time obviously a strange year because the writer's strike is underway as we're recording this, and the actor's strike is looming as a very possible potential here in the next few days. So we'll talk a little bit about how that may fit in as well. Now this video, when we're talking about like where to line up for access in preview night, for the mornings and all of that, this is meant to really help people that are wanting to get into things as early as possible and going after that swag or those exclusives. But at the same time, if you're fine just kind of making your way in, you don't have to worry about lining up at this point, at this time, or any of those things. In fact, if you just want to show up at 10 a.m. in the morning on Thursday after the floor is well open, you can just make your way through Hall A or B or C or whatever and not worry about all this other stuff. But for those of you that do want to have that little bit of extra time in there, you want to hit the floor earlier to get that commission piece maybe or things like that, we are going to show you some strategies and kind of places to line up to make sure you are as in good a shape as possible. Now, it's important to remember some general philosophies about San Diego Comic-Con, and we know always this video, as with many of our videos, some people are watching, it's like an annual thing that they do with their family, and so you could have your own answers to all these things. But others are brand new to the convention, this is their first time out, so always feel free, veterans, to jump in the comments and add extra help there if you can. Make sure, a couple steps to think about philosophy. One, make sure to plan everything, but keep your eyes open to opportunities. We always have a very loose plan philosophically for us, that's important, but we change it so much. So if you ask us where we're gonna be Saturday at noon, we might tell you 2 or 3 ideas, and then by the end of the con, you're gonna find it's something quite different. We're very big on moving around and kind of taking what opportunities we find. Number 2, networking is so important at Comic-Con these days. Having groups that you can work with, friends, allies to help you with like lines and finding exclusives is really helpful, so don't be afraid to make friends if you're not coming in with those friends. And also remember, number 3, maybe the most important one, this convention is all about opportunity cost. There's so many amazing things happening all the time, and it's gonna be some difficult choices no matter what you're looking at. Great and greater a lot of times is what you're choosing between. So now we're going to talk about the lines. First up, Hall A. This is for those that have ADA access. This is where you are going to be able to go, one, to get checked in for ADA, but also to be able to hit the floor. So that is a smaller group we know that watch this video, but it is an important spot to know. So ADA, you're not going to have to worry about the everything else line in the same way, or some of the other parts of the outside convention center lineup that we're talking about there. We do talk a little bit more about that in our floor video as well. But next up, let's go ahead and talk about the everything else line, because we find that is where the most people are in line every year, and probably the most people this year in particular, because we know it's going to be a little bit softer Hall H. All right, as we talk about the everything else line, let's talk about 2 big questions we get, probably the most consistent questions we get. Number 1, is the everything else line for everything else? It's always phrased differently, but it is for everything that's not Hall H. So just very simply, anything you're interested in inside of that convention center, if you don't have ADA access, the everything else line is your spot to go. Number 2, huge question we can never answer, and we get it about theme park things all the time as well, is what time do I need to be there? And it's this very kind of nebulous thing of like, well, it just depends how much you want to be on the floor at a certain booth and how competitive it is. And there's no way for us to know, like, for example, this year, there's no way for us to know right now how popular the ALF exclusive is going to be at the NECA booth. We think it's going to be really popular. It's really important to us. It didn't sell out first, though, in the pre-sale, so it's hard to know, though, how many are going there. With Mattel going into the lottery with the exclusives portal, how many people now that we're going to go line up at Mattel are not going to line up at Mattel and are going to line up at NECA, just a few booths over there. And check out some of their cool exhibits. So it's really tough to know, and that's why for us as a general philosophy, preview night is all about gathering information. It's trying to determine how popular things were, how do booth procedures work, who's giving away what time are they doing signings throughout the weekend, whatever it might be. So preview night is our busiest time of the entire convention probably, but it's busy gathering information to really plan out the rest of the days. And so we really advise you to kind of consider doing something similar, is not necessarily trying to get that one thing on preview night. I mean, if you can, go for it for sure. But a lot of times it's about kind of gathering the info. Now, if there's only one of that item, it's an original piece of art that somebody in Artist Alley has and they're going to sell it, obviously that is what it is. And then it's about how early can you get there. I mean, if you can be there and be first in line and that works for your life, then go for it. For us, generally speaking, with like preview night, we're usually trying to line up somewhere in that 3 to 4 area to get onto the floor. We've been later for sure. Sometimes we've rushed over there and even missed the opening of the floor because we've had other, responsibilities with media things and stuff like that. But generally, we like to get there somewhere between that 3 and 4 area to start lining up there. On the regular mornings, Thursday through Sunday, we're usually trying to be there in that 7 a.m.-ish area. And we know a lot of people will camp out overnight for exclusives and things like that, and that's totally fine. So just again, you have to look at the opportunity cost for you. How do you want to spend your time there? But there's no way that we can really ever answer for you what exact time you need to be in a place for any one thing. It really depends how important is that. If that one thing is going to ruin your convention if you don't get it, then we'd be there as early as you humanly possibly can do it and get ready for it. Now that said, one thing to know about the times of the floor opening. They are incredibly good. Comic-Con International is better than anyone we've seen at any convention, getting large amounts of people onto the floor as fast as possible. And so part of that is normally they publish a time that's half hour later than they actually try to start that time. And so the goal is all the people that got there early that are lined up on top of the convention center there, they're going to get in, for example, on preview night. The ideal is 5:30. Now last year, Fire Marshal didn't clear things. It was much later than normal and it was that 6 o'clock time. But Comic-Con always does the best they can to get that floor open as early as possible. And then the idea is if that floor is open, let's say Thursday morning at 9, everybody's filtering in from the top down. Then by 9:30, the lobby doors will open. And again, we go into more detail about this in our floor video, so check that out. But people will come in from the lobby at 9:30. So if you're not worried about getting anything early, you can just wander over at 9:45 or 10 and go right through Hall C, B, D, whatever you want, and make your way onto the floor. Now, going back to the everything else line and the people that are trying to get in early, though, because they do want to get that piece of art or whatever it might be, the everything else line is going to extend out there behind Hall H, and it's going to wrap behind the convention center. And so it's going to take you behind the sales pavilion potentially. There's no telling how long that line can be. Now, one thing to remember about Comic-Con lines, again, they move fast here. So no matter how bad the line looks, and we'll give an example of that with Hall H in a little bit, they do move pretty fast and get you in there much quicker than we experience at a lot of places. And so that said, even if you see the line when you get here, let's say at 8:20, and it's got you out there. Now, hopefully, they've already let people in the building and you're able to make your way in there. Either way, though, if you do find yourself at the back of that line, just kind of do the slow march in and you'll eventually get in. Never be afraid to ask questions about lines. They're so good also about communicating where to go when it comes to that everything else line, so we've never had a difficult time finding it for as long as we've been going to Comic-Con. Now, once you make your way into the convention center with the everything else line, they're going to have you go up the escalators. You won't have any choice about this. They will force you up the escalators up to the top of the convention center. So again, you don't have to worry about getting lost because they're going to make you go straight up there. If you say, no, I want to go get in Hall H, then you have to get out and go to a whole separate line. But if you're just there to do anything else in the convention, you're going to make your way up the escalators to that higher floor. When you get up there now, here is a part where you will have a choice. As you get out the escalator, do you make the right and line up at the sales pavilion, or do you make a left and go behind Ballroom 20 to make your way over to what ultimately is above Hall H and coming down the Hall H escalators later on? And so that is an option there. You really have to decide where you want to be on the floor and what's most important to you there. We know some people prefer not to do sales because they also line up professional badges on the mezzanine level there, and they feel like sometimes that's a slower process to get in. Also, you come out in small press pavilion. That said, if you're heading to the Marvel booth, if you're heading to Oni, if you're heading to Alex Ross or Image, those booths are so close to that escalator, it might not be a bad idea just to stick with sales, even if it's a little bit slower of a go. Most of the stuff that interests us is more on the hall like E side, D and E. So we oftentimes will go and do that walk all the way behind ballroom 20, make our way, wait over there. Eventually when they open the floor, it is thousands of people making their way to go down that escalator, and then we go to the floor. Now when coming down the escalator, if you are coming from that behind ballroom 20 side, over Hall H coming down, it's important to note the leftmost escalator, they're gonna force you into Artist Alley. So if you wanna go to Funkville, if you wanna go to the DC booth, if you wanna go to Artist Alley, you probably wanna be the leftmost, and you're gonna go directly into that line when they open the doors, or when they're opening the floors there. If you wanna go more to the center of the floor, which is usually where we wanna go, we are in either the center or the rightmost, so we can make our way down towards Hall D and C and B and all of those ones. And so we like kind of being more in the center of the floor at the beginning of the day. It's just a choice of the booths that we're more interested in. But do remember that, because sometimes people end up in that left and they want to get over to go, let's say, to the Marvel booth from that side or something like that, and the volunteers and security are like, nope, you got to go to the far left. As you make your way to the doors, if you're there early in the morning, make sure to try and hold your badge up so it's easy for security to see. It just makes the process go a lot quicker. There's so many times we've been going and we're all kind of making our way to the door, and then somebody's got their badge tucked inside their shirt or their costume or whatever it might be, and then they stop everybody because they're like, no, we need to see your badge, pull it out. And then those few seconds matter, and it causes people sometimes to trip because there's so much momentum of thousands of people coming down that escalator and making their way to that floor. Now, if you're lining up for ballroom 20 up top, that is going to be a separate line. So again, we're coming up the escalator from the everything else line, but instead of going all the way behind ballroom 20 and hooking to the escalator down, we are going outside, and they're going to line us up right there and queue us up. They're not going to let you directly into ballroom 20 at 8:30 in the morning or anything like that. They're going to queue you up right behind it. If you're heading to 6A or any of those rooms up there, you're going to make your way to Sales Pavilion. There'll be lines for those as well. Again, there's so many volunteers. They're so well staffed. Just ask somebody if you get confused at all about anything. And one of our tips always is asking multiple people, so don't be shy to ask 2-3 times to make sure to get that answer. So with that said, let's go talk a little bit about the Sales Pavilion, the mezzanine, and some of those areas. All right, now we talk a little bit about the back of the convention center. You've got the Sales Pavilion there, the mezzanine level that also exits to kind of the outside. I mean, one thing just about that area in general is it can make a nice break, and you can come out here and see the beautiful ocean and kind of take a break from a very busy floor without leaving the entire convention center. So I know for us, leaving the floor to go to the mezzanine, oftentimes we'll take a look at kind of that view of the floor from above, but also we just go outside to kind of get some fresh air, reset, take a 10-15 minute break, maybe grab some food, head back in. And so it can make a great little spot that doesn't take as long to get away from as the front of the convention center, and you're still in that kind of real small bubble of the convention center, but also a breath of fresh air, quite literally, by being outside. One thing I want to talk about with that too is just the idea that as they've moved to more, reservations, whether it be off sites or with Comic-Con International itself with the exclusives portal, things like that, is the thing always to remember if you don't do a lot of like theme parks or conventions, is just when people have reservations for things, it takes them out of these longer lines and puts them in shorter lines, which is nice when you're able to get right into something, but it also means there's more time to do other things. And at a show as packed as San Diego Comic-Con, it just means other areas get more packed. And so it's something to consider, is just it's hard to know how busy different things will be. As we've talked about with Mattel moving to the portal system, every time something moves into the portal, it's a little bit more, or a lot more in some cases, of people that have to move and go do something else with their time. And so that breath of fresh air can be even more welcomed when the floor is that much crowded. Combining that with a softer Hall H year, these things are going to make for probably a pretty formidable floor from preview night through the end of Sunday, if we had to guess. And then we'll see. Remember also in Sales Pavilion, there are signing opportunities up there. Normally the Sales Pavilion, one big draw for people are the autograph opportunities up there, where they are buy a ticket though. More traditional kind of convention experiences. You get in line, you pay $50, and you get somebody to sign something. So there's that. There's also the signings that are one. They also do some of those in exclusive rooms, so you can see in the portal when you do the exclusive signing portal, there are those options as well, and they'll direct you where to go if you win one of those. But we don't have the old, get in line early in the morning for Warner Brothers and see what happens with that. It's just not the same system these days. With that said, this is a good time probably to turn our attention to Hall H, so let's move over there. All right, so we moved over here to the Hall H line, and normally it's a really straightforward situation with Hall H. We know that people are going to be lining up and getting wristbands the day before for the Marvel panel on Saturday and things of that nature. Even coming into 2022, where there was a lot of maybe skepticism about studios returning, it was a good year for Hall H. But this year, we know with the writers' strike underway, with as of this shooting, the actors' strike being very close, not certain what's going to happen there, there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's hard. You know, Marvel can't just throw together a panel, not at least the caliber of what they normally do with a week to go or anything like that. So it's looking like we're going to see a much lighter Hall H schedule, which may mean there's not much to talk about here. This is where the tents will be. This is where you'll line up to get into Hall H panels. But if we're talking about like normally wristband distribution and the day before and all that, it may not be as necessary. That said, also as we're recording this, there's been no announcement about wristband distribution and how that'll work. So make sure to stay tuned to social media for more on that. Although we don't anticipate huge lines for Hall H this year, just remember that no matter how long the line gets, there is hope there. I know there was a year for us that the line literally stretched all the way out past the yachts, past the park. I mean, it was literally the longest it's ever been for us to get in a line, but there seemed to be an opportunity to get in Hall H on Saturday morning, so we got in that line at the very back at 7:30 in the morning, and it was a slow march in, and eventually we made it in, and we saw all sorts of great panels in that Hall H all throughout the day. So keep that in mind as well. Now, in the past, there's been rules, no camping specifically allowed in terms of tents and canopies and things like that, and where to go to pick up your wristband. But we don't have the up-to-date news on that, so we're gonna have to leave that area blank as we're shooting this right now. One big thing we do want to say though about Hall H, and it also relates to Ballroom 20 and any of the panels, is always remember if you're a first-time attendee that Comic-Con does not clear the rooms, which means people will camp out in a room for as long as they need to for a panel. So as we look at Hall H, you always have to think of what is the thing latest in the day and how early are people going to be willing to line up for that. So for example, going back to something like 2022, with Marvel at the end of the day on Saturday, people are willing to go Friday to wait in line to get a wristband, to wait in Hall H all day long just for that Marvel panel because it's always so historic and awesome and fun. And so this year, I don't think we're going to have anything quite to that level. I would imagine Hall H is going to be able to be walk-in most of the time, but always keep an eye on that big schedule there. No, something like Funko, if they're in Hall H and doing giveaways and things like that, that's going to draw a big crowd. And I would imagine we're going to see Hall H max out a few times on the weekend, some way, somehow. And so it's important, again, like Ballroom 20 or anything else, to monitor social, what are the line updates, and follow along in that way as well. Now, if you are going to be in Hall H for any amount of time, make sure you have some food and drink of your own there. They do have a snack bar in there, but it doesn't offer much, not at least much that really is very edible, so you want to plan around that. I know if we've shared in the past that we've had some really long Hall H days, and in the early days we didn't really plan very well for them, and so we were kind of left with, you know, some granola bars and chips and then whatever they had to offer, which was not much there. So you may want to plan to bring some better food there if you are going to do a marathon day. But again, this may not be the year for that. I'm sure we'll be back to that next year, but it could be really nice having a lighter Hall H in terms of just, if you're somebody that has marathon Hall H panels this year, maybe you're able to bop in, bop out, and take more time to see some other things, whether it's offside, to the floor, things like that. Now, our friends over at the SDCC unofficial blog are going to be doing their panel breakdowns the weekend of the schedule being released, so make sure to follow along with that. This video is going to be coming up somewhere in that weekend there, but they do a great job just talking about, you know, all their years of experience with panels and kind of what they think room flow will be. I know we always watch that and think about that. One last thing on that, obviously a lighter Hall H year means more people on the floor. We've already talked about the impact of the lottery, taking people out of lines at places like Mattel to the same way. So this could mean a much more hectic time, whether it's at off-sites, other panels, etc. Just be ready for it. You know, plan accordingly. It's always great to manage, or always really important to manage expectations and expect things to be really busy wherever you go. And then if they're not, and that's awesome. But San Diego Comic-Con, hundreds of thousands of people are coming here to celebrate that weekend, to work that weekend, and it just makes everything from food to drink to restrooms to panels all very busy. So with that said, we're going to wrap up this video. We thank you for tuning in. We hope you'll check out the other two companion pieces to this videos, as well as all the other things we have on our playlist. There are tons of stuff to help you get ready for San Diego Comic-Con 2023. So with that said, until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.